I am so glad you tuned in today to Faith Builders with Philip and Michelle Steele, because today I am going to share with you how Jesus Christ came into my torn up, destroyed, messed up life and gave me a life worth living. I want to share with you some of the details about how my life was before Christ and how He rescued me and turned my life around. And so as we go into this today, I want to share with you, first of all, how Jesus, the condition my life was in before Jesus found me. Even though I was raised in an affluent neighborhood outside of Nashville, Tennessee, with country music singers all around me and nice homes with horses and swimming pools, inside there was a destruction that was causing me to turn against everything good in my life. And I ended up running away from home when I was 15 years old. I hit the streets and I wanted to be as rebellious and as wild as I could be. And I look back years later and I realized there was an inner destruction in me. You know, there were some things I had experienced as a teenager, as a junior high school student, where I had two different adult men, 3 different times that someone had taken advantage of me and had molested me. And that brought in, it opened a door to shame and a destruction that came into my life. And I started just partying and trying to lash out against everything good. And that was what led me to run away from home. And I ended up, after being on the road running for a number of months, I went for a time into a facility. My parents had found me and tried to put me away, and I ended up back on the road again. And so this running, I never really went back home after that. I ended up during this time getting involved with a young man who he was about the same age as me. He was about a month older than me, and he and I started a crime spree. There were times that the police arrested us and they said, "Y'all are a regular Bonnie and Clyde, aren't you?" And so from the time of 15 to the time that I was 23, I stayed in this relationship. I ended up marrying him, but it was never really a marriage like you would have in a normal situation, because he was my pimp. He started prostituting me. And so from the time that I was 16 to the time that I was 23, I was involved in a lifestyle of prostitution. I was involved in drug addiction. And, you know, I started doing drugs not because necessarily of the fun, but for the escape. I started doing the drugs to try to cover all of the shame and all of the inner hatred, the self-hatred that I had. And I would do these drugs just to escape. And I remember making a statement to myself one day saying, I will never be sober another day in my life. And I would just get up. From the time I got up in the morning, I was going after something to help me escape reality, so that I could stay in this place where I didn't have to feel the pain that was on the inside. During my time of addiction and prostitution and being in and out of trouble with the law, I had 2 children during this time, my wonderful children, and it was very difficult because someone else was raising those children. Even though they were my children and I still had contact with them, other family members were taking over the responsibility because they knew I wasn't going to be a good, stable influence in their lives. So their grandmother was raising them while I was living this life of addiction and crime. And it really got out of control. It was something that there was never anything to hold me back. There was never any restraint to it was as much money as I could have. That's how much money we would do in drugs. I remember the first time that I died of a drug overdose and had to be brought back to life by CPR. I had been doing cocaine nonstop for days, I know a good 3 days of nonstop. I had not eaten. I hadn't really drank water or had any normal sleep. I had just been doing nonstop drugs, nonstop cocaine, and we were putting it in our arms. We were shooting it up at this time. And so it was just as we would go, the whole 3 days had been about going to get the dope and then do the dope, go get the dope and then do the dope. And at one point in that, this was before AIDS had become really prevalent, and we were both sharing a needle because we had run out of needles. We'd been doing it so long, we'd ran out of needles. We had one needle left and we were pulling it up. And so he pulled his cocaine and my cocaine up into one needle. And I had been on the phone. I had called while I'm high in this hotel room, getting high with these people. I'm calling to check on my kids, and I get off the phone with her, and he's ready, and he puts the needle in my arm, and he forgets that he put his and mine in one needle, and he gave me the whole thing, the double shot of cocaine. And my eyes rolled back in my head. My heart stopped. I fell over on that bed. And the other people that were in the room, there was one other person getting high in the room with us at that time, and he grabbed his cocaine and hit the door. He left. And he left me there dead. And my husband drugged me into the shower, turned on the cold water. This was my late husband, not the man that I'm married to today. He did not know how to do CPR. So he put me in the cold shower, and he leaned me up against the shower wall, and he took his fist and he punched me in the chest over and over, screaming, "Don't you die. Don't you die. You can't die on me," and punched me in the chest until I came back to life. And I remember, this is what I remember about that. I remember waking up, and it took me a very long time to remember my name. I kept looking at him. I was laying on the hotel bed. I was sopping wet. And he kept saying, "Are you okay? Come talk to me." And he would ask me what year it was. And I just looked at him really funny. And he said, "What's your name? What's your name?" And I tried to remember my name. When I finally could speak, I asked him if there was any cocaine left. And he was so upset. He said, "We're not doing any more cocaine today." And we ended up getting off drugs for a couple of months and trying to clean our act up. And that was just an example of how my life was there was no restraint to the destruction taking place in my life during that time. And maybe you're watching me today and you know somebody who is stuck in this lifestyle of destruction. And you look and you see, and maybe you've watched me on this television channel for a number of years, and you say, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea that Michelle Steele, who's preaching the gospel all around the world in 2 languages, once put so much cocaine into her arm that she died. Her heart stopped beating." I'm telling you that God is able to save, and He's able to restore. If you are that person who is in this situation like I was, if you are that person who maybe you have a family member who is in this situation and you are watching them waste away to nothing on methamphetamine or on Oxycontin or on some kind of drug that is holding them in bondage, I'm here to give you hope today. God inspired me to come back and tell my testimony and to bring it out again, to let people know that there is a God who delivers from addiction. There is a God who sets people free from a lifestyle of crime. There is a God who can take your life and put your life back together again. He can take what if Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and none of the king's horses and none of the king's men could fix it. God can fix whatever has broken in your life. I'm telling you that the Lord desires for you to know today that He wants to help you, and He wants to help your family members, and He wants to not only deliver them, but He wants to do what He did for me. He wants to give them a life that is worth living. You know, when I first read this story in Mark chapter 5 about the man who was once in such a demonic stronghold and possessed by such a demonic power that they called him Legion because there were so many demons attacking his life. This man, Jesus Christ, came walking in the graveyard that this man lived in. The first time I read that story, I thought, I lived in that graveyard. I know what that man felt like. I know what it was like to live in a graveyard of addiction, where anybody who tries to help you, you break off their help and you ruin those relationships. So your parents don't want to talk to you anymore. And your aunts and uncles and your grandma and granddaddy, they don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because you've stolen from them and you've taken from them and you've lied to them, and they can't trust you and they're afraid of you. And I know what that's like. And that's what this man who lived in the graveyard that the Bible describes in Mark chapter 5, he was in such a state of destruction that he cut himself night and day. Just like that person who is smoking that crack pipe night and day, destroying their life. Just like that person who's putting the needle in their arm night and day, destroying their life. This man was living in that graveyard night and day, cutting himself, destroying himself, and screaming out for the inner pain that he was feeling, and lashing out at anybody who tried to help him. But Jesus Christ, he came to that graveyard to reach that man. He stepped out on the shore, and that man saw Jesus coming and ran down and fell at his feet. And the destruction on the inside of him starts arguing with the Lord. But the fact that he is down on his knees before the Lord shows that he wanted help, even though what was coming out of his mouth didn't make it seem like he wanted any help. The Lord Jesus Christ reached into that man's life and set him free. You should read it, Mark chapter 5. It's really, really eye-opening to see how Jesus Christ came in, and in one encounter with the Lord Jesus Christ, this man was forever changed. So much changed that Mark chapter 5 verse 15, I'm going to read it from the King James, and then I also want to read it to you from the Message. The King James says of Mark 5:15, it says, "And they came to Jesus and saw him that was possessed with the devil and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid." The Message Bible says that this man, they saw the madman sitting there wearing decent clothes and making sense, no longer a walking madhouse of a man. Isn't that beautiful? No longer a walking madhouse of a man. You may know somebody who's a walking madhouse of a man or woman today. You may be that person walking around with a life that is so far out of control that you have no idea how your life can continue in the direction that it's going. I'm telling you, it can't. Today is your day. Today is the day for you to turn that direction, for you to encounter the Lord Jesus Christ. He's there in that room with you right now. He's there coming through this television screen. He's there ministering to you through this audio clip. He's there speaking to you. It doesn't matter what kind of situation you're in, whether you're watching this in a jail facility or you're watching this in your bedroom or your living room. The Lord Jesus Christ is there, and he's present, and he's ready, willing, and able to free you from that walking madhouse of life you've been living.